Hello, welcome to Learn With Us, Part 2 with Rob Cameron. Good evening, or good morning.
Yeah, it's early afternoon for me, almost lunchtime. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, so I was thinking about what we should do for this one, and for the guys that are listening on audio, I'll try and make it interesting enough for you to listen that you don't have to watch the video, but probably it would help if you watched the video of this one because we're going to be building some stuff live. And so what I thought about was I would like to actually make something proper with Redwood.js. So what I think would be useful is like a little website application people could use if they wanted to build like a startup. So it'd be like a website that would have like logging in, signing in, have a user profile, and just like a very, very minimal starting. And what I would like to build eventually, I'm not sure how much we'll probably not get hardly anything done in this video, is if you look at this thing here, it's spelled Firebase Starter. It's a little app that I've made, it's on GitHub, and it basically allows people to register, sign in, create accounts, look at users, and look at users' profiles, and the user can change some settings, like the username and the display name. And in the moment, it's using Firebase for everything. So Firebase has multiple services. They have one that sort of takes care of user security and registration and email password verification. That's all really hard stuff to do really well. The security. That's the part that I use for just logging and registering. So you go in to register, you go in here, send some details, and then there's some HTML validation here. But if you go in there, you can make an account just like this, create account, goes into Firebase, and they can use their verified email. That's all complexity that I don't have to worry about. Once you sign into this account, this thing basically you have access to looking at a list of other users, and you can click on their profile. The moment you can just all we're showing is their display name. This is the user's own profile, believe it or not. There's a settings page where users can go in and change their username. So, for example, there's like online check. There's like it goes and checks to see if a username is available. It's a bit like Twitter, like you can go in here, and that'll be their profile URL,
right?
And we can update their username like that.
Okay.
And it's an SPS, so like there's no server-side rendering or anything. All this data is refreshed every time you visit it. So there is a little bit of a performance hit in that. There is like if we go to say the settings page, it will actually go and make sure we have the latest data every time we're there. And there is like features of Firebase that allows you to monitor changes to the database, so you can actually monitor a single line in the database, and every other client will actually get an update of it. But I'm not using that feature. I'm just every time I'm getting data, I'm doing this thing. I'm calling the once method on the Firebase reference, so that I'm just getting the data, the current value. So basically, it's like I'm using Firebase. It's like an overkill situation. But this is essentially the thing I would like to build in Redwood.js, and in a nutshell.
Great. Do you still want to use Firebase for login? Someone actually created a Firebase auth plugin for Redwood. I haven't personally used it, so I won't be able to just tell you off the top of my head how it works. But we could explore it, or we can just go the full like tutorial version, which is doing it all through Netlify Identity.
I've used Netlify Identity actually. This repository was using Netlify Identity.
Oh, okay, yeah. So if we're going to deploy to Netlify, we could just use Netlify Identity here as we rebuild this. I'm more familiar with that one, so that'll make it easier.
We're not going to build a login system with Redwood.js in terms of like. I guess that's a lot of work, right, to do all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen, some people are starting to talk now about kind of building our own version of like a completely from scratch login system, which we're still kind of working on. We kind of have this auth provider that we have, you can call them plugins, but they're supported providers that are built into Redwood. So we have Netlify, Auth0, Magic Link, Firebase. There might be one more, I can't remember. And then we were thinking of a sort of custom roll your own version. So you'll see as we go into it, you get these helpers for the current user, how to log in, how to log out. We would create like a stub version of that you would then flesh out with however you wanted to do that within your own system.
Yeah, I was enjoying Netlify at one point, and then I got to a point where I had to do something that I think I was wanting a database, and I thought Netlify had an inbuilt database, and then I realized I'd have to do something different, and then I just basically started playing around with Firebase, and then I was talking to one of the Netlify guys, and he says, we're not really trying to compete with Firebase, and I goes, okay, I'll just use Firebase then. But let me just check, see what I was doing here. I was working on follow users. I'm still kind of a novice. I'm sorry, I hided your face there, mate. My apologies, I wasn't very polite. So I'm just working on some. To be honest, the queries are kind of scary in Firebase. When I first started using it, I'm like, what is all this stuff? So let me just commit this change that I'm working on with the some of this following and stuff.
Okay.
I would actually be so happy if somebody built a startup from this code that I'm writing. If they wanted to get something quick, like just commit this. And
for audio listeners, he's writing a commit message right now.
Yeah.
Just commit it.
So let me just think. So I actually, and this is quite a lot of commits in this repository here, and I had a Netlify working app at one point till I started to switch it out. But last commit on master for Netlify, I can't remember what I had in this. Let me just check this out. That was a while ago,
huh? That was December last year.
Yeah. Why isn't it letting me check out the commit there? Check out commit. That's weird.
Yeah, it says revision.
It's like the most
9.4e.
basic thing in the world.
Yeah, if you go down to that revision, we'll check that out.
Yeah. How do I use Git? Is it this one here?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Oh,
it should be now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this should be that exact. Well, I don't know what this is.
Yeah,
Smart check.
There must have been some update or something like that. Can't remember what I had there.
What is this IDE WebStorm? I haven't heard of this one.
WebStorm was basically was back in the Java days, where we had a lot of. They just had made this really good Java IDE.
You got to get on that VS Code train. That's what everyone's on now.
Nah, I can't stand Visual Studio Code, mate. I can't stand it.
Yeah, we have a lot of. When you create a Redwood app, we actually have there's like a plugin recommendation list. So we give you a bunch of plugins to install to help you. You don't have to use them. And you don't have to use VS Code, but if you do, you'll have an even nicer time.
You know what? I think I'm just going to use a fresh repository for this, because otherwise.
Yeah, I would just make a new one from scratch.
Yeah, we have one. So we've got this empty repository called Redwood MVP. Got a gitignore file, printer.rc, package.json, and
okay. So delete all that.
Delete all of it. Okay.
Well, you don't necessarily have to delete it. You could keep those files, but when we have a Redwood create script that will create the whole directory from scratch, and it would overwrite that by default the way it is right now.
Right, I see.
So if you want, keep those files aside, and then we'll create a Redwood app, and then you can put those files back in.
Right. Okay. So what point have I got to? Is it?
Yeah, do prerequisites to make sure, because you got to make sure you have the right version of Node and the right version of Yarn to get started here.
Okay.
Yeah, so we need Node greater than 12 and Yarn greater than 1.15.
Why do you use Yarn, not NPM?
Just Yarn seems to be cleaner and simpler, a lot faster. Like NPM had an update recently that I think helped speed some stuff up. But there's still some really neat utilities with Yarn that we use, like this Yarn create. It's just a built-in utility that if you create a package named something-app, you can say Yarn create that package name, Redwood app.
Yeah.
And then it'll fetch that package and then run through a script in it to like create a whole app from scratch. I don't know that NPM has a related thing. So you're on Node, what, version 10?
Yeah.
Do you want to try to upgrade that?
Yeah.
Oh, if you're using NVM, it should be easy, yeah. Yeah, get that 12.13 there.
What the?
Oh, that was easy.
How's that?
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, where do you want this app? So are you in the directory that you want the app's root to be, Redwood MVP?
Yes. Okay,
so go back out one.
So this Redwood MVP is the root of the repository?
Yeah, so this create command is going to want to create that directory.
Okay, I can smooth the stuff back out. Do you do node modules install as well when you do this command?
Say that again?
Does node modules install automatically?
Yep.
You shouldn't. That's my pet peeve. My pet peeve. Don't install node modules.
Really?
Yeah, because
no.
that's the good about Svelte is it doesn't run node modules install for you. So when you want to move it back out the directory. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're trying to make it like as few extra steps for everybody as possible.
This adds extra steps to me.
Really?
Yes, because I have to delete the mode modules to move all the files back out and then run mode modules install again. Because I always my flow is I go to GitHub, I create a repository, and then I use WebStorm to pull the repository in my computer. Then I start doing all the stuff. It's just I don't create a repository then share it with GitHub. I probably could do that and that would fix all those problems. But node modules installed automatically is really annoying for me. It should just one of those things the user should be left to do.
But you need them to exist for the app to work.
Yes, of course.
Why? So why would you not want them?
Because maybe you just want to create a template of all these files that are generated when you create a new app, but you don't want to have all the node modules as well.
You think that's a common use case?
That's my use case. I have to delete it all the time. And Svelte doesn't do that. You create a new app with Svelte, no node modules are installed.
Huh. I've never heard of someone not having node modules. I mean, I know like you'll end up with gigabytes and gigabytes of them. And you might want to clean them up for
I just prefer to install them myself.
Huh. Okay. Well, we could add a flag for that. Actually, if you open up an issue, mention that, and we can add a flag that will basically skip the node modules install. But by default, we do install them. Sorry.
Yeah. Next.
I mean, do you really want to go through the tutorial, or you want to just kind of experiment here as we go?
I don't want to go through the tutorial. I just want to do it.
Okay. Yeah. So go back a directory.
Up a directory.
Yep, up a level, and then you're going to want to actually remove Redwood MVP because this is going to want to create it.
Oh, okay.
Or create command. Yeah.
Okay.
So you just have to reinitialize the Git thing and reset your origin.
So I'll just close this down. Okay. So
and then RMRF Redwood MVP.
Just like that.
That might work. You use -RF. I don't know if maybe you don't have to have that with RM. I would do -RF. Yeah. Yep. Okay, and then you're going to do yarn space create space Redwood-app. Redwood-app. Yep. And then space the path you want it to be. So now you can do Redwood MVP.
Okay.
Yep. And again, this is a built-in utility in Yarn. This Yarn create. Right. So it looks for a package named Redwood. The package has to be named create-Redwood-app.
Right. I see. Okay. I've never used that before.
Yeah. It's really neat. So that's like I've used create React app. It uses the same thing. So it's letting you know that Yarn's out of date, but I don't think that's actually a problem for this. Well, here's your Yarn install. Sorry. So this is downloading all those packages.
Right, I see, yeah.
For the audio listeners, there's a loading little spinner on the screen.
Oh yeah, I forgot we had audio listeners. Yeah, I wonder if it's even worse than the audio version for this.
Yeah, I think this will be the longest waiting step with nothing happening here after this. Things should go a little faster.
There's probably going to be zero benefit for the person listening to this on audio.
Yeah, they're probably not going to get as much out of this. Maybe once we're done, the final repo, they can go and check it out.
Yeah. This is why what podcasting is hard is like this sort of like, podcast. I'm going to basically create I've created a Discord server. I'm going to invite users in to find out what they want from the podcast. Because this is a whole different level of podcast. This is something different. This is quite stressful actually because there's no if something goes wrong, I can't just pause it and
yeah, right.
I can't put Rob on pause and say sit there for the next 2 hours while I fix this issue.
Okay, so now CD into Redwood MVP. And if you want, now you can open that up in WebStorm or whatever. But you could also just do here, if you do yarn RW, short for Redwood, dev, so space dev, yep. And that'll start the development server. And this actually starts two processes. It starts, so we talked about on the last podcast, we talked about how Redwood kind of has two sides, like the web side, which is the front end, and then the API side, which is the back end.
Yeah.
So this starts two processes, and you'll see them prefixed there in the logs. There's API and then there's web. So the two processes that are running. So you can see there API and web. And then it open up that browser, and if you give it a second, it should have loaded. There you go. So now you get your welcome page.
So let's see what they're doing here. So they've got this binary command on RW generating the Prisma client.
Yeah, so that's a separate process. So, Prisma has these libraries to talk to the database, and every time you make a change to that schema file, Prisma needs to regenerate this client, which creates all the JavaScript to actually talk to the database. And of course, it hadn't been ever generated because we just created the app from scratch, so it has to generate the first time.
Oh, that's interesting. Webpack. Okay.
Yeah, so it creates that. There's a server running on 8911 that presents the actual functions. So if you go to 8911, you'll only really, when you're developing locally, you'll usually only use 8910 for the front end. But in 8911 there, if you click on GraphQL, there's this comes from Apollo, this GraphQL playground. So you can actually introspect your GraphQL endpoint. And if you can see it over there on the right, there's two little tabs, docs and schema. So it'll actually show you, of course you don't have anything yet, but it'll show you the docs and the schema for your GraphQL and help you write queries out here. So that's one way you can, as you're developing, you can be, there's a built-in one, I guess, to get the version of Redwood. But as you're developing your GraphQL endpoint, you can also be using this little playground to make sure your queries are working the way you think they are and returning the right data. And then you can go and plug them into your actual app.
Wow. So you got these are your data types, I see. And these are your queries.
Yeah, there's that built-in Redwood one.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
if you go back,
it's a lot that's been installed for just one npm command here, man.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. The whole thing's in there, ready to go. Okay, so you'll see that welcome screen until you add your first actual page or a custom route.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll show this welcome. So what do you want? Do you want to do a home page?
Yeah.
Do you want to get right to the database? Okay, if you want a home page, so Redwood, a page is still just a React component, but in Redwood, sort of our preferred paradigm, a page sort of equates to a URL. So if you go to / which is the home, that would be a page. You go to / about, and that's a separate page, which is really just a component that we happen to call a page. Yeah, you'll see it here on the directory structure, right? So we have pages, and we give you two by default. We got that not found page, the 404 page, and then if you have a fatal error, we also wrap that. So, in production, you don't see a nasty JavaScript dump. You can see make a custom, basically a 500 page. Okay, so now you can do this like you're doing how you're creating all this from scratch, but you don't have to.
Okay.
So we have a generator make all this for you. So if you delete that one you created.
Can we just do I get in that here?
You could, you can remove it there if you want, but you can keep the server running. So you should keep the server running and then just open up a new tab and do these other commands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so do yarn remember with dev again, just let that run. In theory, this can just run forever. Every once in a while, I've run into a case where I've added something and the server doesn't quite pick it up right, and I just have to Command C and go back in and start the server again. But yeah, so delete home that you created there, and we'll use the generators to do it.
You've got VS. Hey! There shouldn't be a VS Code there. I guess there should because most people are using it.
Yeah, so these are recommended plugins. So if you open it in VS Code, you'll say, hey, we see these recommendations. Do you want to install these? And you'll be in an even nicer place to start coding. Okay, so you delete that home page?
Yeah, I'll just do it now, mate. Just, I guess node modules is added to get ignore.
Yep. Yeah, so it won't be checked in for sure. Yeah, delete that guy. Okay, so then back to our command line.
I'm just going to commit all this, so I've got a good point that I can go back to.
Oh, yeah. Did you add your remote too? Because we'll need it up on GitHub for Netlify to actually deploy it.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just push it to GitHub. This is what WebStorm is the best, man. Commit and push.
Oh, this is all in VS Code. This is no big deal.
Okay, let me just do. I've import into version called GitHub, and it'll say that it sort of already has a project there. But let's just try share it anyway. Yeah.
I can give you the command. You can do it if you go to GitHub and just copy the URL. We can just do it on the command line. Add the GitHub as a remote.
I hate using Git. I hate using the command line with Git. I'm a GUI guy.
I know. I started out that way too. I like got into the GUI and I'm like, oh man, I would never go back to the command line. But there's just a few commands that seems like none of the clients really handle very well.
Okay, it's there.
Okay, cool. All right, so back to the command line. We'll use our generator to make that page, and it's going to do a couple things for you. It's going to create the route and everything automatically. So you can do yarn rw, and you can use the full word generate, or you can just use the letter G shortcut. So do G and then page, because we want a page. And then we want the name of the page, which is home. And by default, it's going to want to put it at the URL /home, which you don't want, right? You want just slash. So add one more parameter, space, just slash. Yeah, so you say you want it.
I like how I don't have to install a CLI tool here. I can just do yarn and then it's there.
Yeah, there's a guy, there's a company Decoupled, and he's, whoa, what is this?
Oh, sorry.
Get NVM use again. He's writing a bunch of VS Code extensions. You can actually like make these generators available through the GUI in VS Code, which is really interesting. He's still working on that.
So that added one file called Redwood.js, and also it added these two files here.
Yeah, and notice the name convention. So the name ends in page. And we did that because, as you start developing and you have dozens and then eventually hundreds of components and everything sort of mixes together in all these different tab names. So we append the page to pages and layout to layouts. So it makes it a little easier when you're just viewing through all your tabs. It makes it easier to find what you're looking for. We found. Okay, so now if you go back to your browser, actually, the A910 tab.
I'm just checking what this thing made. It's made this is some code that runs on the page, I see. It's very much like Ember here. Very much like Ember.
Yeah. So that actually made the page, and then made a test file for it as well. And there's the route. See, that made that. So the path is slash. The name of the page there that's rendering is homepage, and then it gives it the name home. You reference that on the other routes. But now if you go back to that browser tab, it should have reloaded, and you'll see your homepage now. Boop. And there's even a little note there to let you know where to find that page in your code. All right, so you got a homepage. What do you want to do? Do you want to make a users database table?
So how do I go to the page? This is the homepage here.
You're on it right now.
Oh, right. Find me in. So this is... Okay, so what's the index page doing then?
That's just sort of a React. That's a standard React thing, right? So
yeah.
That's just your default React app wrapper.
So this is a JSX here, right? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right, nice one.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to do actual users table? We should probably get started with the database stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you know this? You know the structure of your user? What you want to see?
I want them to have a username and a display name.
Okay. So let's go back to the code, and we'll open up. This is going to be on the API side because it involves a database. So you go with that API directory, and there's a Prisma directory, and we really love to rename this like DB or something, but right now it's named Prisma. Schema.Prisma. So there's an example in here, and this is a limitation of Prisma where you have to have something in this file, or Prisma like freaks out when you try to generate. I wish we didn't have to have this, but you want to delete that, or actually you can start with it with what's there and just rename the table name and the columns.
Okay.
In that schema file.
Sounds good.
So go back in there, and oh, geez, what happened?
I had to restart it because I had to install a Prisma plugin.
There was a plugin for WebStorm?
Yeah, WebStorm just knows when it doesn't have a plugin for something, so it just then tells you to install it, and you install it. That's what I like about WebStorm is people don't have to think to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I created the Visual Studio Code Discord. I have about 3,000 people or something there, but I don't use Discord. I don't use Visual Studio Code anymore.
Huh.
And the reason I don't have that background is that I'm coding a lot outside, and it's just easier to code with the sunshine.
Okay, that's the svelte one.
Okay, so now we have syntax highlighting for the...
Oh, cool. Yeah, what if it's based on Prisma 1? Prisma 2 is fairly recent. Like, I'm surprised they'd have these plugins updated for it already. I think the syntax is pretty close to Prisma 1, though. Yeah, so you can delete that comment if you want that to-do comment and the comment above it. And we're just going to rename that. Yeah, you can rename that model, just call it user.
User.
Yeah. Prisma sort of examples sort of use singular because when you actually run the JavaScript code to access the database, that turns them into singular. So that's just sort of their recommendation, which I don't necessarily love, but it works. I think you can do plural. It's just you might end up confusing yourself down the road because some stuff's singular, some stuff's plural.
So apart from the authentication table, the kind of schema I'm using is just like it's users, and then I got user ID, then display name, then username.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine for what we're doing. So if you go in, you might want to add email, just so we can use that as like the unique identifier to look them up from what we get from Netlify.
For the Firebase email stored within the authentication table. So the authentication table holds the password and the email, and then
for us that'll all be in Netlify, so we won't even have to worry about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you can leave ID, and it's simpler just to leave it as an integer. There's the email. We're saying the email should always be unique. Yeah. So now you can do like display name, and if it's optional, you can do the question mark there because it may or may not be present.
Yeah. It's when the user signs up, because I wanted to make I wanted to have less amount of forms, and I didn't want to have a username form, display name form in the registration page. So when they sign up, they're missing some data, and the code takes that into account. So there's certain points of the code that it'll just say like it'll check to see if display name's not there. If it's not there, it'll actually say display name not set. And when the person logs in, there's a little it just tells the user there is stuff that's missing in the profile, but it doesn't break the app.
Okay.
This Firebase Starter thing is up on GitHub, and if anyone has a better way of me making it, they can do a pull request. Because I'm sure there is optimizations that I could do, but anyway.
Yeah, I think this is good. That would be optional, then you can fill it in after. Yeah. So then you make username, same thing, probably string optional.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that looks good, what we want to do is we want to make a migration so that basically turns this into code that can run to actually change the structure of the database. So back to the command line. Make sure that one's saved. Is that saved? Yeah. All right, so now you can do yarn rw db save, and this actually proxies over to Prisma. This is now really a Prisma command. Go ahead and enter there. And now Prisma will look at that schema file and be like, okay, this schema file looks different than the last time I looked at it. So I need to create a set of changes between the two. You're going to name it. You can call it like create user. That's what it is.
Okay.
And you'll see just the files it creates, it prefixes with this name. Yep. And you'll see there it created. So it created this in the Prisma directory, created a migrations folder.
SQLite.
And then made a
Prisma.
Yep. So it's using SQLite by default. That's the simplest one because Prisma basically comes with SQLite. So if you don't even have it installed, you'll still be able to use it. You don't have to go and set up a MySQL database and add a user and yada, yada, yada.
What's this generator client thing?
So that's where Prisma has to generate the actual JavaScript files to talk to the database. And I'm not sure why they have a provider here. Maybe eventually there'll be other clients you can use, but right now there's only theirs. And the binary targets says which binaries to get that it needs to talk to the database. And by default, it's like the native binary. So it looks at your operating system and gets those.
Do I even have a Schema-Lite installed?
You do now because it comes with Prisma.
And what about all these unversioned files here? So I've got this migration lock file. I guess I have to commit all these files, right?
Yep. So there you go. And they create a README that explains what's going to happen, and then it includes a snapshot of the schema in that migration, and then the actual steps.json is the actual JavaScript that needs to run to migrate the database. And it created the actual database. So it created dev.db, and that is not checked in.
Steps.json.
Yeah. So it's like, I need to do a create. I need to create a field. Here's the name. Here's the type.
That's quite a lot of code that's generated there, isn't it?
Yeah, and then it has its migration engine that actually runs all these commands against the database.
I guess that's code you don't really want to inspect privately.
Yeah, you don't really ever care about that. You don't need that for anything. That's just all internal.
So what's this? There's two schema files here.
Right. So there's the main one, which is always your running current state of what the database looks like.
Yeah.
And then it basically snapshots it into each migration so you know what it looked like at the time.
Okay.
So right now they're identical. Yeah.
Okay. And there's a whole bunch of SQL that's been generated as well. Oh, this is the stuff that's actually applied.
Yeah, this is the README. They're letting you know this is what's going to run when this
Right, I
when this
see.
migration runs.
That's pretty
But
smart.
again, you don't really need to do any of this. You're going to run a command, and this will all just happen for you magically.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't we turn that off? Code analysis. Okay, nice one.
Okay. So back to command line. You're going to do yarn redwood db up, which then applies that migration. And then you'll see it does that generating client again. So now there's a difference in the database, so it needs to regenerate the JavaScript files to access that database table. And nothing has changed on the front end. It doesn't really do any good. But what we can do is we'll create a scaffold. And in the scaffold will give us those CRUD pages so that we can access that database table through our app.
So wait a minute, this did some changes here, but nothing's changed on the code.
Yeah, so this all that did was change the actual structure of the real database. It didn't do anything on the actual code.
Right.
The code base itself hasn't changed. Okay, so now if you do yarn redwood generate scaffold, so do the G, yep. You can just do the G if you want. Scaffold, and then user, which is the name of the model we just made.
User, yeah. Just like
Yep.
Is it light or uppercase user? I can't remember.
I actually don't think it matters here when you do it. It looks it up and does the correct thing. I tend to try to keep the cases the same for myself, just to keep track. But
DB, what's a DB file?
So that's a SQLite database.
Oh, I don't want to open that with text file then.
No, probably not. There's a couple GUIs. It's a GUI called Base that'll let you open up SQLite files.
So there's a capital U there. Let's just do capital U for...
Yeah, I tend to keep them just in my own mind, just to keep them the same. So here we go. We're going to generate scaffold files. Going to create a bunch of pages. Going to create a layout. Going to create some cells. Add some routes. And then head back to the browser. And it was called user, right? So now if we go to /users, plural, because this is like the index page reviewing them all. Now now you got to do lowercase u. URLs are lowercase by default.
It must be kind of nerve-wracking, like, watching this, because, like, if something goes... If there's something, at least it's not a live video.
And there you go. So now this is like an interactive form to access your database table and create your users. So you can create some sample users in here if you want. So if you say create one, it'll bring you to the form to actually create one. It doesn't include the ID because that's set by the database, right?
Mm-hmm. Whoa, cool. So like in this Svelte Starter app, the username has quite a lot of functionality. So like if you go to the profile, I've broke something in the app there, but when the page loads, the username causes other things to load. So there's obviously custom logic there for the username. I guess it's quite simple to modify this app to do other things with the username. Just once you learn how to use Redwood, you'd pretty much I'd expect that. So
yeah,
like if I wanted to say compare the username to other usernames and have like a cross that says don't, you can't submit and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you can customize these scaffolds to do that. Of course, by default, it doesn't. It's not going to do that for you, but
that's why I kept all that kind of. I made it. I use as much lightweight stuff as possible. Like all the form validations using just native validation. There's no like JavaScript checks except for things to pass on the event to the back end kind of stuff. So if I go in here, if I put some bad characters in, would it still let me save it?
Well, right now it's still a string, right? So it doesn't care.
Yeah.
But you can. There are validations. So we use something called React hook form.
Yeah.
And you can add validations for that format, and then it would fail, and you'd get a little red bar there that would warn you, and it wouldn't let the form submit.
What about this email here being like that? Would it let me save this?
Yeah, go ahead and try it.
Okay, so it's not. So, it's just a string, right? It's just a string.
Yeah, because it's just a string. Yeah. So now you could go into that scaffold and add email validation, and then it won't let you get past that.
Is that something that you generate, or that's just something that's done manually?
If you wanted to add email validation in there?
Yeah.
Right now, today, you would have to do it manually, but we're kind of working on a thing now where we're looking through different fields and saying, okay, if this field contains the word email, it's probably an email address, so let's add email validation automatically. It's not in there yet, though.
See, the cool thing about Firebase is like you can sort of on the fly create these queries, and it's like you have one endpoint. It's just this Firebase path, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Whereas here you're using you've got these GraphQL queries.
Yeah, and they're co-located with the code. The idea being, this component, in theory, can be completely self-contained, and you can reuse this component anywhere because everything you need is in here. The query, what to do when you load, what to do if there's an error, what to do if there's no records, and then what to do when it works correctly.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And then you've got a graph. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so you've got these cool little. It's a lot of code that's been generated, mate. It's pretty.
Yeah.
That's a lot of code, man.
Yeah. Has to make a whole bunch of stuff, for those. And we try to, you could probably do it one big page if you wanted to, one giant component.
No,
with a bunch
definitely not. 100% not, man. That'd be horrible.
Right,
horrible
but we
to
totally
maintain.
want this to be like, we want the everything that's scaffolded itself should kind of follow the Redwood ethos and be nice and compartmentalized and reusable if you want.
I'm getting tired of this light theme, man. Going to dark theme, man.
Yeah, you gotta make that dark. There we go.
Because, yeah.
Darkula.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
This is a pretty cool font as well. This is a specialized font that's been made. Look at the G's, how easy it is to read. It's a bit wide. It's about 10% wider than a normal font.
Oh.
Yeah.
Here's a curly G. Yeah, I use Fira Code. I don't know if you've seen that one. It has like ligatures for certain combinations of characters. So if you do like an equal, there's actually a ligature that combines
this
it into
does the same
super
thing.
long equal thing. Yeah.
I use this professional one called Mona Lisa. I don't think it's been released yet, but it's fantastic. It really is fantastic.
Yeah, it looks nice. I like those G's, like the curly.
Yeah,
G.
you got like all this stuff as well. Like, not. I don't know why it's not working, but it's probably turned off. Anyway, shows you how much I notice it when it's not there, right?
Right.
So this is a React new user form, and it's using functional components.
Yep.
And is it using anything like? See, I've not used much React in the last 6 months. What's I know use state, I know about use effect. What's this use mutation thing? So
that's Apollo. That lets you make queries that would write to the database or mutations. Everything else is just a query.
That's amazing. It's actually proper React. It's churned out here.
Yeah. Yeah, we're using hooks. It seems like hooks are like the future. Like once they release hooks, everyone's like, oh my God, this is the way everything should be. So everything's like very declarative and nice. So it just seems to be where the whole ecosystem is going. So we just did that from the start, and everything's hooks. So you'll see when we get into authentication, we have a use auth hook that we created.
This is ridiculous how much code I have done here so quickly. It's
ridiculous, you didn't know anything yet, right? This is great.
It's got tests as well. What do the tests do?
Yeah, we made tests too.
Where do the tests go?
So we're fleshing them out for the scaffold. We don't quite have them for the scaffold yet, but if you go to like your homepage.
Where is it? Kind of here.
Yeah, go to source pages.
Source pages. Yep.
Yeah. And you go to homepage. You'll see there's a homepage test.
Yeah.
And it actually like renders the homepage and all it does simply because right now it doesn't know what you plan to do. It just wants to make sure it doesn't throw an error. So it should render correctly is like the most basic thing you can do, right? That doesn't blow up.
Yeah, so I could go here something like why is this? Was it just some kind of linting going on here? So it's not brought up.
Well, you're inside the it block, so you would make a second it block for another test, yeah.
So if I wanted to do another one in here, I could just do like expect homepage, and then I could do 2 match snapshot, and did that work?
I'm not an expert at React testing. I couldn't tell you what the syntax should be off the top of my head.
Yeah, snapshots are useful for testing that a bunch of code doesn't change the way, because like normally you can check components and you can check to see like this element's there and that element's there, but snapshot captures the whole thing, and to match inline snapshot of a small component would generate the code there. If Jest was running, I think, and it would, or you can save the snapshot to a files. And I used to not like them, but I kind of got to like them.
Right, and there's a command, right? You can like regenerate the snapshots or just compare that the one that's there already is correct. And
Yeah. If you have, I think, yarn jest running in the background and you do that inline snapshot, it will change the file here and it'll say, do you want to reload the file? And it'll stick that code in there. Or the next time it runs a test, if it's not inline, it will generate a file and the snapshot will be in like a snapshots filled in the folder. It's really, really useful. You can overuse it though if you wanna have lots of. If you want to look like you can contribute a lot to the code base, you can create lots of tests.
Use lots of snapshots.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Really.
Yeah, you should be able to say, if you go to the command line, you should be able to say yarn test or yarn jest. I forget. Maybe it's yarn test. Try yarn test. And it would run through all the test files that we have that we've generated for you. I think it's just yarn test. Yeah, try that. No, maybe yarn jest. We just got this working where we have tons of internal tests in the Redwood framework, but we started exposing this test file so that it works locally. Yeah, you probably won't find it in here. We have like all our commands are like hidden inside our Redwood internal.
Also, it's not in the. Okay.
Yeah, it's like It could just be jest. Yeah, try yarn jest. Oh, is it back to?
Maybe RWJS.
You got to use again. You're back to node 10. Because you made a new tab.
Wait a minute. Why was I using Node 10? It's because I'm using a lot of stuff with Firebase, man. That's the trouble.
Okay, now try yarn. I think it's try just jest, yarn jest. Yeah, and see what that does.
Oh, it's doing something.
There we go.
Oh, cool. It's doing stuff.
Yeah, we didn't. So we looked at the stuff. Yeah, we might have the ones for the server side might not actually be running yet.
Right.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that. But if you look at the we looked at the website, all the stuff that generated on the website, but there's a bunch of stuff we generated on the API side as well, like the GraphQL SDL, and we generated the services for talking to users. You can look at those if you want.
So we've got API here, yeah.
Yep. So in GraphQL, you create the SDL, the schema definition language. It just says what fields are available, and then you create the two query types is like all users plural, and then a single user, which you'll look up by the ID. And then there's the input types. So when you're creating or updating a user, here's what fields need to be present. And then the mutations are creating a user, updating a user, deleting a user. And normally you would write these resolvers that would say, when you say create user, update user, delete user, what does that actually do? And you have to manually write out these resolvers. So we automatically map these to the services file. So you'll see that was another file that was created. And in the services file will be all those names: create user, update user, delete user. There we go. So we automatically map those from the GraphQL to this file. And this says here, when the GraphQL wants to create a user, this is how the user is actually created. And this is now using the Prisma. So there's DD user create. You pass it the fields.
So one of the cool things about Firebase is that you don't have to write any of this code. That's why you pay through the nose of Firebase, though. But I basically, this is my DB layer for the Firebase. Let me just see where it is. Let me just reset the GitHub repository to where it actually was today, because this is all Netlify stuff. So I don't care about that. Anybody can check out this code, by the way, because it's on GitHub. What are those unrun files? So with Firebase, the cool thing is that I have just there is some stuff for cloud functions where, because I want to have, and it says I wouldn't even need to use cloud functions for a lot of stuff, because a lot of the authentication is in paths. The cool thing about Firebase is that you can have this sort of database rules, and they can be very restrictive based on who is logged in. So my whole database layer is just this Firebase backend file here, and these are not secret keys. They're just so like this file. See for the app that I made there. Mm-hmm. This has most of the logic for all the backend stuff. 318 lines. So for example, get the current user. this is basically looking at local storage and check to see if anyone's actually logged in, and it loads that out. That stuff I basically copy pasted that from Stack Overflow somewhere. And also like this anything with Firebase off is like stuff that's handled by Firebase. And then it's like you can .then it, and then I have something called user data store, and that's like this felt global store, and I basically set it to null, and a lot of the app uses that. But things like update user email, that's using Firebase off. But all the custom DB logic is stuff like I've got this function called update personal data, and you basically get access to the database. You access a ref, which could be anything really, and you can write to it as long as you have the permissions in the database to do that. And you can create these really sophisticated database permissions things based on paths, and there's all sorts of queries and stuff you can do. It just means that like for all this code here, to do all this stuff with GraphQL is probably 10 times the code, right? That's just why Firebase is quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, for us, like all that logic you just showed would basically all go in the service. And then the GraphQL is just exposing that point to the front end, so the front end can make a call to it. But the idea with GraphQL is you've got this generic API layer that now if you decide, you know what, I need a mobile app. Well, you can put the mobile app's code into this Redwood app, and that mobile app uses the same GraphQL API.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I need a app that's going to run on a space station, and that uses that same GraphQL API. Yeah. So the idea is GraphQL just becomes that one interface to all these back-end services. Yeah. And you can plug as many front ends onto it as you want.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a big budget and like had proper teaming and all that stuff, I probably wouldn't use Firebase. I'd probably use something like GraphQL because it's going to be much cheaper in the long term, right?
Right.
Anyway,
we'll see. Do we have time? Do you want to get into authentication? It's almost 12:30. What do you want to do?
We can pause and do the next episode if you want at some point.
Okay. I mean, we could. To get authentication, we actually have to deploy to Netlify so we can get the URL and plug it into the. So
what do we push to? I guess we just push this to GitHub, right? That's all we do.
Yeah, actually, well, and we can see how far we can get. Yeah, push up to GitHub. Everything you've got so far.
And while you were waiting, here's one I've made earlier.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, so we got our Netlify account. So we want to set up a site. So I do a new site from Git over there, and GitHub.
Master.
Yeah, and then it reads in the build settings from the Netlify. We ship with the netlify.toml that configures all this stuff, and that's correct. You want all that in there. So just say deploy site. Is TOML here? Yep, it's in the root. So we needed to deploy somewhere, and Netlify was just, for us, it was like the sort of the perfect storm of how to deploy quickly in this Jamstack way. So we kind of shipped with Netlify support out of the box, but we're adding like 2 or 3 other providers right now. So there'll be more coming.
Okay, deploy site?
Yep. But that'll actually fail because we need to give it the Postgres connection string as an environment variable.
Yep. I made that as well. Is this like a super secret string? Like somebody could really mess me up if they had this?
I mean, if they saw the whole thing, they could, in theory, have full access to that database. Yes.
Like, is this enough to?
But it's cut off. Yeah, it's cut off in the end, so they won't actually see the whole thing.
Oh, and they can't mess me up, right? Okay. So what I do, I just copy what?
You want that URI, the URI?
Yep.
To copy that whole thing.
Yep.
Copy that, and then go back to Netlify. And you could, as you edit this, maybe just add a blur over that, just in case. And then go to site settings. And it's trying to deploy right now, and it'll get a little ways. It'll break because it won't have access to the database. Go down to build and deploy.
And how fast am I doing here? Am I like average speed or normal speed or slow or what?
No, you're doing this is great.
All right, okay.
This is like average speed, yeah. And then go environment. Yeah, and we're going to edit variables, and we're going to add that one. This is going to be all caps database _URL.
Bang.
And then put that in there. And we're going to add one more. I have to look this up myself because I always forget what it is. I think it's binary _target. And the value is going to be, just a second, let me look this up here. Okay, the value is going to be RHEL.
Yeah.
Sorry, all lowercase. This is going to be all lowercase. So this is Red Hat Enterprise Linux _ OpenSSL, all one word, -1.0.x. Okay. And this is just, there's a kind of a disconnect here. So when Prisma is building those client libraries, it looks at the current host and says, okay, what operating system am I on? Those are the libraries I need. But when it's being built on Ubuntu in Netlify, but it gets deployed to AWS Lambda. And AWS Lambda is a Red Hat Enterprise Linux flavor. So we basically need to give this hint to Prisma to say, hey, don't actually build for Ubuntu, build for Red Hat, because that's where you're going to go. Okay, so save that.
So this, what's gone to AWS?
The function, so the GraphQL endpoint is a AWS Lambda function that's going to live in AWS. But Netlify hides all that for you.
Who's an AWS account?
Netlify. So Netlify manages all that for you.
Oh, right. Does it, right? Okay.
Yeah. So, and we're working on a way to let you deploy to your own AWS Lambda, not through Netlify, but we're in progress on this.
All right.
Okay. So now go back up to the top and go to the deploy tab. Oh my God. I've never seen that happen before.
That's just a comic relief.
There we go. Okay, so go to deploys.
Deploys.
Top there. At the very, next to overview. Yep, deploys. And you'll see it says it's published, but it's not actually going to work. So on that little drop down there on the right, it says trigger deploy.
Yep.
Drop that down and say deploy site. So this just triggers the deploy process. Now, if we watch these logs, we will hopefully see the Prisma migrations run, which means it has access to the database. So we'll see they cache a bunch of stuff to make sure the next deploy is still fast.
I like how I'm learning Redwood for the first time. I just skipped the first 20 steps of the tutorial and went straight to deploy.
I know, it's nice, right? Let's see.
I guess it's kind of good to see a new person learning it, so you can develop your training materials and stuff. I'm probably some
absolutely.
case studied that.
Yep, we see where people get stuck at, and then we know now we need to upgrade stuff. Okay, great. So there, the migration is running, and it ran. So that should be in Heroku now. And then what happened here?
Unknown binary target RHEL OpenSSL-1.0.x.
Oh, sorry. It must not be underscore. It must be -OpenSSL. See that? Next to it shows the proper one. Sorry, that was my bad. Okay, so go back to those environment variables. To be RHEL-OpenSSL. I'm going to have to change that in our... No, that's right in our doc. Sorry, I misread it. Yep, back to environment. And then just edit variables and edit that one.
Like that?
No, sorry. Instead of the underscore, it should be a dash, or it should be RHEL dash. There we go. Save. And then back to deploy and trigger deploy again.
The screen that goes funky there.
That's weird. And I think it'll still... That other one, I guess it doesn't actually exit 0 when it blows up, so the other one keeps going.
Download something 246 megabytes from cache.
That's its own,
image of Redwood.
I think it's, I don't know if it's like the whole deploy engine or the build engine. It might be what's in that cache.
Imagine every time they downloaded Linux, they'd have to contact Linus. Ask them to send them the file.
Ask him for permission. Yeah, it might store those all on S3 or something. Okay, so now it's migrates database up completed. So the migration worked the first time. Now it's actually able to build the client. So the client worked. Now it's building the API side, building the web side. And then all the web stuff gets packaged up, sent to a CDN, probably CloudFront. API stuff gets bundled up into these functions. And for each... if you look in the directory structure, there's API SRC functions. Every one in there gets its own AWS Lambda install. In this case, there's only this one right now, GraphQL.
I wonder how my audio listeners are doing.
Is it still recording? GarageBand shows we got some peaks there.
I wonder if there's any point at all publishing this to the normal podcast audio. I can't see it, mate.
Not going to be much for them to do, yeah. Tough to follow. Okay, Netlify build complete. So if you scroll up a little bit, it'll say preparing functions, uploading functions, site is live. There you go. So now, if you scroll back up to the top again, Netlify gave you a URL Sorry, hit that deploys to go back. The top little
This one?
caret. Yeah, that one. Yeah, sorry. And you'll see there's your URL, nostalgic care. So you can click on that guy. And now this should be the actual app. So there's the homepage. Now if you go to /users.
I'm so skeptical this is going to work. I really am, but we have done a lot of things there. Yeah.
Make sure it's users. Sorry, plural users. User would require an ID like user/1.
I'll be shocked if this works.
Boom.
I'll be shocked if this works, mate. I really will.
Well, the fact that it showed create one, it already worked because it went to the database, saw there wasn't any, and came back and said 0. There we go.
Are you
It's
serious?
working.
Are you kidding me? Are you?
Redwood, man. Redwood.
Dang, man. That's just... So where...
Okay, but now we're in a really good spot to start authentication. But do we want to do it next time? How are you doing on time?
How are you doing on time? I'm okay.
All right, I can do another half hour. I want to get something to eat eventually, but I'll do it. We'll probably get authentication working in 30 minutes. No
Okay.
problem. Yes, so go to the identity tab there, and you're going to click enable, and this gives you access to this. And what we'll do is we'll create a user. So the first one you're going to have to do through their interface because there's no way to show the prompt to log in without well, you can show the prompt, but you can't do anything until you have a user. So if you click that invite users there on the right, you can create a user for yourself. Yeah, and this needs to be a real email address because they're going to send you the verification.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so that's going to take a second to go through. But in the meantime, what you can do is that API endpoint, you want to copy HTTPS nostalgic care .app. You want to copy that URL.
You want to copy this URL?
Yeah, you don't need the whole thing. You don't need the Netlify identity, just up to the .app. Yeah, so copy that because we're going to need that in a second. So now if we go back to dev, actually go back to the command line. And we're going to use another generator. So we're going to yarn Redwood G auth Netlify.
This Netlify stuff took me ages when I was first using it. Eventually, when I got it working eventually. So
Yeah. And then space Netlify. It's spelled wrong. Netlify. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
I've got some emails there. You've been invited to join. Accept invite, I guess.
So, well, not yet. That URL is not going to work yet because the URL is going to go to production, and Netlify identity isn't in the code base yet, so it won't work.
Right.
But we need that URL on the dev side, and you're going to see in a second how we're going to do that.
I like following along with GitHub to see what changes at each point. Otherwise, I'll just forget what happens,
Yeah. So right now it's adding a couple node modules. And then when we get to those next steps, it'll generate some files.
I like this format of the video. I've not done this before, like the live tutorial of this.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Okay, so if you look now, there's some new files created for you.
Package JSON inside of web, Redwood auth, Netlify identity widget. Yeah, this is what I first started to use when I was building my Firebase app. But eventually I got tired of it because it didn't have password reset and recover and all that stuff. So I basically built my own one of that with Svelte, but I didn't use it as a pop-up. I have different routes.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's all in the widget now.
Yeah.
Look, you can see what else changes. It should be a new file. There's an auth.js. Yep. So it adds this. So this is how you're going to get your current user on the API side. This adds this for you. This is this GraphQL function, which you normally don't ever really have to mess with yourself manually.
Okay. And
then, an index. So there's where it initializes the identity widget. And now it wraps the routes in this auth provider from Redwood.
Yeah, that's like my little... I've got a little... Is that like an authenticated route? No, I'm basically talking... I don't know what I'm talking about. That's to quit when you know you're failing here.
Yeah, it's the way it's like a React provider consumer thing. So it has to surround that so you get access to some stuff.
Okay.
Down inside those components. And then it should have made one more file. There should be an auth.js file it made.
This is a ridiculous amount of code that's been made, really. Like in 1 hour. In 1 hour, we're here.
Yeah, right? You see, there should be one more file. I'm surprised. There should be an auth API.
There is one more file.
API SRC. There we go. So now this is then you can define what you want. When you say get current user, what should that actually return? And in this case, this authentication scheme uses JavaScript web tokens, those JOTs, JWT. So by default, it just returns the same JWT that it gets back.
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can write this to actually go to your local database and find your local version of your user and return that.
Yeah.
So what do we do for authentication, right? We want to lock down some endpoints so people can't create records. We want to hide probably that user's, the scaffold, because we don't want someone to just come along and be able to edit any user they want, right? So the first thing we could do is we could lock down the GraphQL endpoints.
So I'm just going to save this because this was what was the command was it? We generated auth.
Yep.
Generate auth, right? What was it? Auth what? Was it just...
It's auth netlify, but that's just, we just generated the auth support stuff.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we need to lock down something user.
Yeah, so you can see here, right, there's this function require auth. So this is like a little helper function that we create. You can put this function in your services, and then you won't be able to access your services without being logged in.
Yeah.
So if you can take that name, that require auth, and we'll go into our services file, API, SRC, services, and there should be a users one in there.
My brain's starting to slow down.
Yeah.
It's that hour of the day. You can start getting inefficient.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, so we'll do this real quick. So we're going to import that function at the top there. So you're going to import require auth from src lib auth. So this is more of the backend locking down. So you can't even get access to these database calls if you're not logged in.
Yeah. Apologies for the small size of
front.
font, but I can't make this thing any smaller and have a functioning video.
That's okay. And you will require auth. We don't really care about get current user yet. Yep, require auth.
Yeah.
And then you can make those function calls in the sensitive actions. So like create user, update user, delete user. You can just before it runs that return, just call require auth. Yep. And that will raise a GraphQL error if the person's not logged in. And you can do one on update and delete if you want.
So like also that I have something similar for my Firebase Starter, but it's basically checking to see if an object's not null or not. That's all it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just so the user can't do something stupid like register when they're signed in,
Right. Yeah, and you can add all the other validation here you want. You just want to make sure you raise like an error that GraphQL will recognize and know what to do with.
Well,
okay.
Create user. Why do we need to be auth to create a user?
Well, if you want users to be able to create other users,
right? Not register.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So this way, they'd only be able to create them. Like the system could create them. The system could create the user who just logged in because now they're logged in. They have access basically to create. We don't have. This is only authentication too. Remember, this isn't authorization. So we're not saying like, oh, an admin user can do this, but a guest user can do that. We don't have that yet. It's coming in Redwood. We're working on that now.
Yeah.
So right now it's either all or nothing. Either you're logged in and can do everything, or you're logged out and can do nothing.
See, if the next time I do this, I'm going to have instead of having the CPU, which is clashing with the colors, I'm going to have like a Learn With Us live or something like that, or Learn With Us like video.
Okay.
I'll need to create an episode of my audio one because a lot of people don't know how a YouTube channel listen to me that, and just like say, hey, this is only 10 seconds to tell you, go to YouTube for this one or something. All right, so we created the require auth.
Yep, so those are locked down. So now we'll lock down the actual pages themselves. So you can't get to the admin pages. We'll call the scaffold. I'm calling them the admin pages. So if you go down to the web side and you're going to go to the router, so you actually lock these down at the router level. This is the easy. I mean, you could manually do this in each component if you wanted, but we support one here at the router level. So you're going to add one import. You're going to add private to router and route. You can just add in that list there, yeah. Private, sorry, capital P.
No.
And then what you're going to do is you're going to take those routes, the user's routes, and you're going to surround those with a new tag, private.
It's not in here. Is it? My WebStorm's been stupid. Okay.
Yep. So now surround the user's routes with that private tag. You can do one. You can do like a block around all four of them. So you can just do private at the top, like after the opening router, then you can do the opening private.
Ah, okay.
And then you can indent the 4 user ones and then close the private. Yeah, you probably don't want to do it around all of them. You just want to do it around. So you'll be able to get to the homepage if you're logged out. You just want to lock down access to the scaffold. Yep. Okay, so now if you go to the website and you try to go to /users.
Locally?
Yep. So just reload that now. And that right now it throws an error. So there's one more attribute you can put on private. We're going to expand this to do more stuff soon. But if you go back to the routes and you add an attribute to private and you say unauthenticated equals home. So you say somewhere to go when you are not authenticated. Sorry, it's unauthenticated. UN authenticated, all lowercase.
Oh, nice.
We'll have a way to do we'll have a way to do other things besides this, but for right now all it does is if you're not authenticated, it's going to redirect you. It's a string.
How did it know that unauthenticated was an attribute?
That must be WebStorm must be looking into private and knows.
It's not TypeScript, right? It's JavaScript.
Well, the router might be TypeScript now. I'm not sure.
Okay, so
what? But I get those in VS. It's just a string. So just give it the string home. So you give it the name of the route you want it to redirect to if the person is not logged in.
Like that?
Just the name, though. Just home. Nope, no slash. Just like the name. Yep. Lowercase. So the same name you gave the route attribute,
right?
You give it there. Yeah, and you can get rid of the curlies because it's just a string.
Look at that.
Yep. So now the front end pages themselves are locked down, so you can't get access. Now we need to actually let you log in so you can access them.
Okay.
So maybe on the homepage we can make a login, logout link. Would probably be an easy way to do it. So if you go to the homepage.js, and you can replace that or just add after it. What we can do is and we'll do an import here at the top. So we'll import link and routes. Well, I guess let's see. Now we don't really want a link. We just want an actual like a href. But we do need to import here. So we'll say import curly brace use auth capital A.
Mm-hmm.
From at RedwoodJS /auth. Yep, right there. Okay, and then the first line after homepage before the return, we're going to then use that.
Sorry, the first line.
Sorry, after before the return. So we're going to create a constant here.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll make a const and curly brace. We're going to destructure login, and it's log capital IN. Because it's like a function process name, capital IN, yep. Only one I, though. You still got the lowercase I.
Like that?
And then use auth as a function. So that's open, closed, parentheses. And then you got an extra I there in login.
Is this using like Netlify under the hood or something? Or does some...
So use auth has a provider hook thing that we use. And we told it to use Netlify. So now it knows it's going to use Netlify's version of login, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You still got that extra I there in login.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my brain is slowing down.
There we go. Okay. So now let's add
coding all day, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So now let's add a link, like an actual A, like a anchor tag, old-fashioned link.
Yep.
So we'll say A href equals, and you can just say $, just so it registers as a link. You can just do it like as a string. It's like string pound. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then, American pound. What do you guys call it? Hashtag.
Oh, like this?
Yeah, that guy. Yep.
I was like, what is a pound?
and then the on click for this now will be login. So we'll do an on click equals curly bracket. Yep, login. And then you can just close that and give it a label, login, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now if you go back to the front end, the web. And then where is our link at? There you go.
And up pops the Netlify Fantastic.
now here's that. Remember that URL I had you copy? That's where that URL goes.
Oh yeah. I remember doing this when I was using
Yeah.
Netlify.
So it needs to know which identity or identify, I guess, API endpoint to use, whatever. So you just give it the URL to use that. Okay. And then you get this. Now you can't do this yet because you don't have a password, right? You invited yourself, but you haven't created a password. So now go back to that email, and this is where we now need that link.
You have been invited to create a user on.
Yeah. So click that accept invite.
Okay. And it's taking me
to production, and you'll get an error.
Nostalgic.
I can't see that.
Carry.
Yeah. I can't see that, by the way. I don't know if that's in a separate.
I'm doing my phone just so that less work to edit out all the email stuff.
Oh, well, you're gonna need to copy this URL.
Right. Okay. I'll just edit it out. So I'll go to my
sorry. If you, yeah.
email.
So
email. Right.
They give you an invite token, and we need to use that same token, but in development instead of production. Now, once we deploy this and all the identity stuff is in production, then you can click those links and it'll work fine because production will have all the authentication code running. But for now, we only have it in dev. So I think it's that top one. No, it should be you've been invited to.
Yeah, I've got these emails. You've been invited to, but they're somewhere. This one?
Oh, there it is. Yep. Okay, click that accept invite. And then off this URL, you're just going to copy that pound invite token equals. You're going to copy all of that, including
hash.
Including the you want the hash too, or just remember to type it again on there.
Okay.
Okay. Now go to dev, and now you're going to paste that on the end there. Okay, it already has the hash, so you're going to paste that on the end of the URL. Yep. Enter, and then you got to do enter again because that just looks like a anchor tag. Yep. So now you should get the prompt, and it should say, now complete your sign up. So put your password in. Now you've got your user. There you go. And the first time it's going to show this, which doesn't really do any good. So just close that. So now you're logged in, but there's no proof you are. So now if we go back to the code, we can add like, welcome back, whoever. So maybe after that, right? So now you can say at the top there where we have our const, we're going to destructure one more thing. So you can destructure is authenticated, capital A. And you can actually destructure, you might as well destructure current user out of there too. While we're in there, comma, current user, capital U. Yeah. And then maybe after that link, we can have a little conditional. So you do like a little curly bracket and say is authenticated question mark. Yeah, you have to do like a space, like after is authenticated space question. Yeah. And you can say hi, and if you want, you can use the current user. So you can say current user.email because you actually have access to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, current user. I don't know if it's, it might not know that because it's a JavaScript web token, doesn't know what's in there yet. And then you can say colon, or I guess you could do, I guess if you don't want to do the alternate, you can just do and instead of the question mark. But yeah, there you go. Aha!
Hey.
Now what we can do is go back and we can make that a login or log out. So if you destructure log out, in addition, up there at the top, and then in your on click, you can say, is authenticated.
So that we can do like all this stuff, right? Authenticated.
Yeah, you can do two separate links, or you can just in the on click, you can put the conditional in there.
Yeah.
And then change the label too.
Designers take note. And learn.
Did it do
Hey, look
anything?
at that.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then what you can do is right now you see the sign up half of that tab is grayed out. So in Netlify, you can just turn on allow like anonymous signups, and then you have access to that tab.
I remember using that. The reason that I eventually stopped using the Netlify widget was like it didn't have all the stuff like create, like recover and those kind of things. That's what I've done in my app, but this is certainly faster than what I've done.
Yeah.
In 1 hour.
Now, again, this is only looking it up right from Netlify. So like those details, those aren't coming out of your local database. So now you need a way to link those records to the actual ones in your database, which is where you flesh out that get current user function. I don't know if you remember that in that auth.js, that was get current user.
Yeah.
And you can define, here's what I want current user to be. I want it to be my local copy of a user. So you would just write out the code to access that. From, based on the Netlify email address, look up that same user in my database and return that instead.
Yeah. That's basically what
and then you can say, then you can say current user.displayname, current user.username, whatever you want.
It's basically what I did with my Firebase one. So when the user logs in, let's see, login. Sign in. Always catches me, right? So basically sign in, and I've got this log thing that checks to see if we're in production mode or not. Log attempted to sign in, then we get the user from Firebase auth, and then we say we check to see if the person's verified or not, and if they are, we do this thing called get user data and store. Then navigates to home. This get user data and store basically uses the logged in ID and says he's attempting to get the user data stored in real-time database for user this and this, and the match is done basically here. We go to the Firebase users directory and we have a UID based on the logged in user, and we just do a query and then I put all the stuff into the Svelte store.
Right.
If the user hasn't actually, there will be no user returned back from the real-time database if there's no data in there. So you will get no user from the user data. In that case, we just store the user ID in the Svelte store, and that basically tells the app there is a user there. If there is something back from the real-time database and there's a MongoDB store, we actually go and take the user from the query and we stuff that into the user data store. And that thing's used all over the app for various things.
Yeah, I do something similar where we don't have a built-in way in Redwood to do this, but what you can do is in your login, in that get current user function, you can say, if I don't find this user, then assume he's signing up basically for the first time. So then create him and then return him. Yeah. So you'll be created at the time of a successful login if you're not already in the database.
Yeah.
And we're trying to think of a more Redwoody way to do that right now. It's kind of manual.
Yeah. But. I wonder. It'd be nice to see like not using a Netlify identity widget and just have like some kind of. It'd be nice to be able to build it purely out of all the Redwood stuff, because that's basically you're tied to that thing being maintained. I don't even think the Netlify identity widget's being maintained that much.
Right.
Because that's why
Yeah, so someone's working on right now. Behind the scenes, Netlify uses GoTrue. I think it's just an open source authentication. Yeah. So someone's actually working on a formula right now to use GoTrue raw. Yeah. And then again, someone else is also just working on here's how to roll your own.
I did actually do that with GoTrue in this repository before I was in Firebase. So basically, I wrapped GoTrue. That Firebase backend was actually a GoTrue backend or something like that, and I had all these form inputs in Svelte that were using the GoTrue API.
Oh, okay.
Before, so maybe, I mean the code's buried deep in those 130 odd commits.
Yeah, I could dig it back out. It might work. Some of it might work. We'll hide a lot of the the guts of it, so you don't have to worry about too much stuff, and just give you access to the few endpoints you need to make it easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Authenticated.
Nice one. Well, that's great.
Yeah. And then we didn't get into it, but now on the back end, there's always something available called context. You'd say context.current user. So in your services, so then you could if that user created a blog post, let's say, you could link it to the current user because you'd have access to that user on the back end now.
Is that here?
If you go to services users. Yeah, so at the top you would say import. Actually, I don't think you need to import. It's kind of like DB. Like you notice there's no actual import of DB anywhere. It just sort of exists. We've done that in several cases. Like same thing with React. Like every single component needed to import React. So like screw it, we'll just do that behind the scenes for you. Yeah. So the same thing with this context. Context is just available. Yeah. So you could say context.currentuser.id, and that would be your. Once you look it up, right, you have to define get current user to actually look up your user, and then context.current user would be whatever that function returns, which is your local user.
Mm. So I'm trying to think, if I wanted to use this framework but not use React, could I use this as a backend to like? Does it have to work with React? Oh, I guess. Yeah, must do.
It doesn't have, like you could just use the API side and do GraphQL and Prisma. The Yarn Redwood Dev, I believe you can just say Yarn Redwood Dev API, and it only does the API side. So then whatever front end you develop, you would just need to know, I need to talk to port 8911 in development. And that's where my GraphQL endpoint is, and you could use just the back end,
Yeah.
And same thing, you could use just the front end if you want and not care at all about the API.
But then again, well, is there like another open source project that does the backend stuff like this?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm sort of new to the whole JavaScript ecosystem of like the last year or so I don't really know what else is out there. There's so many frameworks. It's like mind-boggling how many there are. Well,
I guess it's easier. The most bang for the buck is Redwood is actually using Redwood for Redwood, right? It's like
right, exactly.
Yeah. So there's no point using Svelte with it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's got to be somebody out there who's combined Apollo, which is our GraphQL thing, and Prisma, probably, if you just cared about the backend.
This takes me back to when I was using Flash and ActionScript. When Flex 4 came out, there was Flex Builder had this kind of functionality where it would generate a whole bunch of like forms and stuff like that. But it was a nightmare to maintain because the code wasn't really that clean.
Whatever happened to Flex? Is that just done now?
Well, I wish they told us like 4 years after I started my career doing Flash. They basically came out one day, and then one morning they ruined every Flex developer's career. They basically says, we think HTML is the future, and then people were absolutely livid at Adobe for saying that, and they're like, all our clients are turning away and all this stuff. Basically we had to learn JavaScript, which was not my first choice.
Yeah. I remember when, this was like 10 years ago now or something, Steve Jobs put out like a release of why I think iOS wasn't going to support Flash, and that people considered that was like the death knell. Like as soon as he did that, Adobe was screwed. Like they knew there was never going to be a future for Flash at that point. Yeah.
And we saw some attempts to get Flash to work on the mobile, and the performance is abysmal, like.
Yeah. Yeah, it just turned out there was like so many like security issues and stuff, and just oh man. Yeah. I was at Home Depot. It's like our local home improvement store, and I was getting some new carpet, and they brought up like their little admin interface for ordering carpet, and it was a Flex app, and I was like, oh man, I haven't seen this in a decade. It worked really well, but man, I feel bad for whoever has to maintain that now.
Yeah. Let me just bring up a picture of me to prove to people that actually you're talking to me, not just like.
Oh, watch your computer's going to grind to a halt here. Oh, there it is.
The computer. But the reason we did this, guys, is not because I'm shy. It's because my computer was dying, basically, when we were trying to. This is the latest MacBook Pro, so there's your overrated, expensive hardware that we have to use because we don't want to use Windows, right?
Yeah, supposedly, right? Apple's going to AMD now, and that's the RISC architecture. And it's supposed to be more performant and less battery intensive, and so we'll see. It's supposed to be within 2 years. I think everything's supposed to switch over.
I should send this back to where I got it from and get a refund.
Yeah, gotta get a new one.
Well, that was very interesting. I'm going to keep following this Redwood stuff, and I'm going to watch this video, try and remember all it is, and as you guys make, probably as you get away from this Netlify identity widget thing, it'd be great to see what kind of code scaffolds we can use.
Yeah, if you check through our docs, you go to we have an authentication doc.
Yeah,
and it talks about our other. So yeah, right now it has Netlify identity widget, auth0, Netlify go true, which is just the raw version, magic links, Firebase, Google Auth provider through Firebase, and then that's the one. That's the only ones we have currently documented, and we have a couple more in the works. Yeah, if you go to just docs, authentication.
I'm saying that anyone if anyone wants to poach my Svelte stuff and convert it to React, they can check it out, because the forms I made are very, very lightweight. There's no styling, and they're just. Anybody can do it. You don't have to copy me, but if you can go to my page and see the routes that I've made and duplicate their own routes, and
cool. Well, I hope you had fun.
Yeah.
I was going to say, anyone wants to, we're happy to contribute or accept all contributors. Like I think there's more than 60 people now that have had merge pull requests. We're a really nice community. Everyone likes each other so far, it seems like. But yeah, we're always looking for help. If you just want to write docs or if you want to write code, anything and everything is more than welcome. And if you go to the website there, we also have the links to our community where you can discuss if you need some troubleshooting, you need some help. Or have some proposals for major changes, like someone proposed using Preact instead of React. People have proposed Vue.js, so we're kind of looking into those, getting discussions going. And also, if you want stickers, we will mail you stickers anywhere in the world. You'll get 3 RedwoodJS stickers. Just go to redwoodjs.com/stickers and give us your address.
Cool. Well, if you're a React developer and you like GraphQL, and this is for you, pretty much. And now you front-end developers have no excuse to not be full-stack developers, because everybody wants full-stack developers before they want specialists in front-end or back-end now.
Right. Yeah, this could be a very good gateway in going from front-end to full-stack. We don't there's a prerequisite mentioned in the tutorial that we kind of assume React, GraphQL, and a little bit of database stuff. So we don't teach you GraphQL, but there's plenty of good documentation out there about it. So if you want to learn it, and then come and play with Redwood.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rob. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me.
And hello, YouTube. This is the Learn With Us video, I guess. Video only. And thanks for your time, and I hope you enjoyed it. And see you around next time. Bye-bye.